knows which lawyer you should choose. Other lawyers know. They've invited Gary C. Johnson to teach his method of judo law in Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, and across the nation. Gary used judo law to set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the history of Kentucky. Now, which lawyer should you choose? The choice is clear. Gary C. Johnson. This is an advertisement.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello, everyone. Keith Casebolt back with you on the radio program entitled Simply the Law of Life, which was created by my dear friend, Gary C. Johnson. Good to see you.
It is wonderful to be here.
It is indeed. It is
Another
indeed.
week. Got to talk to you folks a little bit about motorcycles. Past weekend, I got a call where a man and woman was on a motorcycle making a left-hand turn, and the folks behind them were looking at their phone.
Oh, no.
And literally rear-ended them. Both people were absolutely destroyed physically. Then I got to talking to the family a little bit about, well, what insurance is on the motorcycle. And I realized I need to talk to you folks about that. If you have a motorcycle and if you have it insured, get your policy out and look at it. Make absolutely certain that you have personal injury protection, PIP, on that motorcycle. In fact, since it's a motorcycle and you can get hurt so bad if you get hit, you probably ought to buy what's called added personal injury protection. And that's money that pays, that's money that's available for your wages and your medical bills, regardless of who's at fault. It's the no-fault provision of it. It's a personal injury protection. You will not have it on your motorcycle policy unless you insisted that your agent put it on there. They don't sell it if they can keep from it.
Gary, it almost should be a law that you should have to have it, because any accident that you have on a motorcycle, there is going to be damage done.
And again, motorcycle policies are different than car policies. Your car policy will automatically have personal injury protection on it unless you've rejected it, which State Farm sent out a thing giving people a chance to reject it. I hope you guys didn't fall for it and do it and fill that form out they sent you, but that's beside the point. I'm talking about motorcycles. You need to make absolutely certain you have underinsurance on the motorcycle. When you get a motorcycle insurance policy, it's generally nothing but $25,000 liability. And if you ask for collision on it, you get that. So, folks, it's summertime. You will be riding motorcycles, a bunch of you that's listening. Please check your policy and make absolutely certain that that it's at least identical to your car's. Okay?
You know, I had a relative a couple of years ago that was in a motorcycle accident. He was doing under 12 miles per hour, and he lost his life.
Yeah.
It killed him. So the damage that can be done on a motorcycle is unbelievable. And, you know, I was out driving over the weekend, and I saw several motorcycles, and I remembered what you told me. Drivers don't look for motorcycles because they don't see them all fall, winter long, and then all of a sudden you jump up in the summertime and you look, you don't see that truck or car, and here comes a motorcycle, and you pull out in front of it.
It's incredible the amount of damage it's done to the human body, even at 2 or 3 miles per hour if a car hits it.
Yeah, and here you've got that limited coverage that's not even going to pay nearly enough.
Now, this is enough talk about sad stuff, right?
Oh yeah. Let's talk about good stuff.
Let's talk about how we're going to be happy this year,
Well,
my friends.
There's laws to that, you know.
I've been reading this book, Can't Stop Thinking, by Nancy Collier. Pretty interesting. She talks about how to let go of your anxiety. So I'm going to read you a little bit from this book. I love reading from these books because they got such smart stuff in them.
Well, it's fun to learn, isn't it?
This little section's on a good life. While we have a sophisticated educational system, oddly, we don't learn the important skill we need to maintain a basic state of well-being. In order to create and sustain a good life, we must cultivate a conscious and constructive relationship with our own thoughts.
All right. You and I just came into the studio and we were talking about a news event that happened over the weekend. A young tennis lady by the name of Oksana, I think is her last name, one of the best tennis players in the world. And she stepped away from the French Open tournament because she was dealing with depression. And she got fined for it. But a lot of people come out and said, you know, her mental well-being is the best. Now, here's a lot of people going to say, Gary, this young lady is 21 years of age. She won the U.S. Open. She's worth millions. She's one of the top tennis players. How could she be unhappy, and how could she be dealing with depression? And you just read us how that's possible.
It's the voice in her head.
Yes.
And that's what we keep talking about on this show.
That is giving her negative thoughts.
It's giving her negative thoughts and making her miserable, suffering.
Even though she has all of those great things going on in her life, that voice, for some odd reason, is telling her that she's not happy.
Then she goes on to say, we cultivate a conscious and constructive relationship with our thoughts, a relationship that allows us to use thinking for the delicious benefit it offers, but that doesn't permit thinking to take over our life or wreak havoc on our experience. We have infinitely more choices than we know when it comes to our own attention and what we do with it. We are not powerless when it comes to which thoughts we take a ride on. We don't have to live at the mercy of the thoughts our mind throws at us, which is positively not what our mind wants us to think. A glass of wine can be used as a lovely treat at the end of a long day, but that same substance can be used as a means to flee from our life, avoid the present moment, inflict self-harm, fulfill an obsession, or any number of destructive ends. This is true of our thinking as well. When we think without awareness, discernment, and discipline, we give up control of our life. We give away our own attention, and with it, the authority to decide our state of mind and well-being.
Now that's interesting.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that the glass of wine can become a depressant if you're having negative thoughts, or it could be used to celebrate or for enjoyment if you're having positive thoughts, and that the inner voice in the mind is much like the glass of wine.
She talks about a lot of stuff in this book. What she's primarily saying is you can't just say, I'm going to think positive. Remember years ago I said we need to shut the chatterbox up?
Yeah.
You can't do that.
That didn't work, did it?
She says you absolutely cannot do that. You cannot shut your thoughts down. She also says you can't shut your negative thoughts down.
They're going to come in there no matter what.
She said what you can do is learn how to deal with those thoughts and whether to buy into them, whether to become a witness to those thoughts and just watch them, or accept them as being who you are.
I love the point that you're making. So when a negative thought comes into your mind, by being detached, you can sit back and say, well, that's interesting, but, I'm not sure that's in my best interest.
This is what she says about it. She was talking about the self-help where you're supposed to think positive and all this stuff. She says self-help sells a kind of cognitive ammunition, an arsenal for winning the war against our unwanted thoughts. But what you want is not to feel controlled by your thoughts, but then the answer is to stop trying to control your thoughts. Stop trying to defeat them. What frees us from negative thinking is not winning the war our thoughts over and over again, minute by minute, day by day, for years on end, but rather removing ourselves from the war altogether. I think that's pretty profound.
It really is, isn't it, in the way that she's looking at it? Mm-hmm. And that's talking about the detachment again. Mm-hmm. You're just removing yourself from the emotional tie to the negative thoughts.
Then she goes on to say, thoughts appear and disappear within our field of awareness. We, however, are not responsible for their content. Thoughts can say what they want and will, and we can still be okay. Our thoughts stop controlling us when we can cultivate a separate place inside ourselves from which to observe thoughts, and when we stop seeing it as our job to correct and conquer them. Freedom dawns through awareness, specifically the awareness to see what's happening inside your own mind as an observer, and it begins by surrendering the responsibility for controlling what you see. You can't control your thoughts. Literally, you can't do it. It's what she's saying, and I agree with that. But you can distance yourself from them.
So when people say things like, I can't believe that popped into my head, or, as you and I have talked about, when some people have said or texted things and they've come back and said, that's not me, you're saying that's truly true. Wasn't them.
That wasn't.
It was just a crazy thought that popped into their head.
And they wrote it.
They wrote it or they said it, but it truly wasn't them. And I guess people will kick against that and say, oh, no, if they said it or wrote it, that's really who they are. But you're saying that's not true.
And she goes on to say, awareness is the practice of creating an inner witness who can see thoughts without being identified, merged, or collapsed into them. Before you can make any choice about how you want to relate and respond to thoughts, you must develop an I, a different person, or a witness who separates from thought. You need to step back, as we can't change our relationship with something until we can see it as a something we're in a relationship with. As Eckhart Tolle explains, once we can see our thoughts, we no longer are addicted to them.
Now, Gary, does this all boil down to the fact that your friend or your coworker or your neighbor can come to you with any problem, and you can listen to it and give them excellent advice because you're not attached?
You're an observer.
You're just an observer. So you're sitting there listening to their problem or whatever's going on in their life, and you can tell them the answer. But if it's you and it's happening to you, you struggle with it.
And folks that are listening are saying, this is ridiculous. How in the world can you do it? She's got a little small exercise she says you can practice.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
And I'm going to share it with you.
Okay.
She says, imagine that you're pointing a camera at your mind right now. What do you hear and see? Okay.
All right.
Number 2, as you're the camera, observe what's happening in there inside your head. Are there lots of thoughts or just a few here and there? Are the thoughts distinct so you can make out the particular words or images they carry? Or are the thoughts appearing more like a background of static and noise? What do they look like? You know, she says, step back and appear like you're taking a camera and you're pointing it inside your head. What do you see when you your thoughts. What are they doing? What are they saying? Are they making any sense?
So
are they distinct so you can make them out?
You're kind of making a movie out of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're starting to become a witness to it. Number 3, what's the mood of your thoughts? How do the thoughts feel without going into the content of them? In other words, how do they feel? Do they feel sad? Do they feel happy? How do they feel? You're watching this, you're stepping back from them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're pretending you're a camera. You're looking inside your head at your thoughts, and what do you say?
So like when people get on social media and say, oh, feeling blue today, the thoughts and the inner voice that's going on in their head is definitely in a negative blue direction.
That's right. They're blue.
And no matter what good happens that day, it's probably going to be perceived that way, isn't it?
Always is. If you point up at the sky and ask, what's that? Most people would tell you a bird, an airplane, a cloud, or some other object they see at that moment within the sky. But what goes unseen and unexperienced is the sky itself. We are so trained to focus on the thing appearing that we miss the infinite space, the sky within which the birds, planes, clouds, and all the other things come and go. Such is the case with our mind. We perceive only the thoughts, but not the awareness out of which they arise and into which they disappear. We hear only the words, but know nothing of the one who hears the words. To change your thinking, however, you must become aware of the awareness that surrounds thoughts, like the sky hosting the birds.
Now, I love that. To me, that is profound, because what I get from that is there could be 1,000 good things going on in your life. There can be one negative. And what she's saying is we're focusing on the one negative, and we don't see or acknowledge the 1,000 things that are going well for you.
Right. You don't see the big picture. You don't. I guess what she's saying, we hear only the words, but know nothing of the one who hears the words.
Yeah.
In other words, the whole book is about basically finding a way to distance yourself as a separate entity from your thoughts. Understanding you need your thoughts, you need thinking, you need planning, you need all of those things. And only buy into the ones that are beneficial, make you feel good, and are helpful. Tune out the others. You can't control them. They'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
But don't give them life and make them you.
And as we started the program talking about the young tennis player, there's the prime example. The negative thoughts have robbed this young lady of the ability to play the game that she loves in the tournament, to have fun, to make money, to do the things, because the negative thoughts have robbed her from the experience.
She needs this book bad.
We all, my friend, need this book bad.
But the thing about it is, folks, unless you can make peace with yourself, by the way, which is your worst enemy,
mm-hmm.
and maybe your only enemy, you can't hope to be happy. And this year, remember, is the year we're all going to try to get some happiness, right?
You know, listen, what you've been talking about and teaching over the weekend, the Memorial Day weekend, I went to the cemetery with my parents, and as I was walking through the cemetery, when I would see people I knew, I would think, if that individual could come back, what would they say to us? Would they have had the conflict with their family? Would they have been mad at their brother? would they have had the issues, more than likely, Gary, they all would have come back and said, oh, what a waste of time. All of those negative things that I was thinking and all the things that I thought was so important that upset me, now truly I understand was a mistake.
So, folks, if any of you are feeling bad that are listening to this program, that your mind has got you to where you're sad and miserable, try to distance yourself from those thoughts. You can't control them. They'll be there.
They're going to pop in your head.
But you don't have to accept and adopt them as you.
So do you ask the question, would I wish those thoughts on my worst enemy? Would those thoughts be of any benefit to my friend? Because they're no benefit to me.
That's right.
So you literally are not trying to keep them out. You're just sitting back and saying, does this benefit me?
I'm going to watch them.
I'm going to look at them
I'm going to
and
be a
say,
witness. And if it makes me feel good, I'm going to buy into it. If it doesn't, I'm not.
So can it be like changing the channel on the TV? Over here are the positive thoughts. I think I'm going to change the channel and start watching the positive. Because the negative are not bringing me any happiness.
Understanding that the negative are going to be there.
The channel's always going to be on.
You cannot. I guess the most profound thing I've learned from reading these books is that you cannot stop the voice in your head. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
The two most important things I've read in these books is one by Eckhart Tolle, and this one is the only way to control it is to surrender to it.
To realize it's going to happen.
And once you surrender, you're free from letting it control you.
You gave it its space.
You give it its own.
You realize they're going to come. You just detach back and decide which
Say,
one.
I'm not going to fight with you anymore.
Go ahead and have your thoughts.
But I'm not going to adopt you as me.
They're not going to dominate who you are.
Simply because I'm not fighting.
Well, the little test this week is to point a camera at your thoughts, let them pop up on the screen,
And see what they're like.
and see what they're like, and look at them and make up your own mind. I mean,
Separate from those thoughts.
yeah, that if you're watching them and they're not you, they're just thoughts, which one that's going to benefit you?
Which one's going to make you feel better?
It's all about the happiness. I can promise you that. You can reach Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. We'd like to hear your thoughts, maybe some of your input on it as we make this journey toward happiness, and hopefully we're all headed in that direction. Also, you can catch Gary's television show Tuesday nights on WYMT at 7 p.m., your CBS affiliate, Simply the Law of Life. And I am now understanding there are laws of life that
Amen.
that they're going to come no matter what. A late night replay is in Central Kentucky on WKYT, your CBS affiliate. And if you start the week early and the weekend early, you can catch us on the Fox affiliate, Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. and then Friday morning at 6:30 a.m. Again, if you would like to reach Gary, it's Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. My friend, a good lesson, and it is so good to be alive.
Be happy, my friends.
Indeed. On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for taking this time to spend with Gary and me. We really do appreciate it. And as always, Gary and I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here at this same time.
Thank you for watching Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
Who really knows which lawyer you should choose? Other lawyers know. They've invited Gary C. Johnson to teach his method of judo law in Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, and across the nation. Gary used judo law to set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the history of Kentucky. Now, which lawyer should you choose? The choice is clear. Gary C. Johnson. This is an advertisement.